I think that we as Black people all need to experience being in Africa because that's our origin. And a lot of the divisions that exist between us, misunderstandings, judgments on both sides, it's all by design, it's manufactured to keep us separate.
Hey everyone, welcome to BT Talks. My name is Unique, and we're back with another episode. And today's guest, Vic Mensa. How are you?
I'm good, how you doing?
I'm great. So how does it feel? Like we're 10 years right now. We're about to celebrate the anniversary of Innanetape, which is next month. Like how does it feel to be this deep in the game so far?
Feels like a blessing. The music on that project gave me a vessel through which to communicate with the world and connected me with people from Norway to Ghana, and South Africa, Tokyo, Australia, New Zealand, you know? Not to mention here at home introduced me to a lot of people, or a lot of people to me. So for the music to have lived with people that long and still be meaningful to them and still be valuable in their lives is a blessing, you know what I mean?
Yeah, because I know one of the songs that introduced everyone to you was Orange Soda. Like, I vividly remember being on Twitter and, like, a screen grab from the video, being on Twitter and being like, what is this? And clicking it. And that's how I got introduced to you and, like, your music, which I think is dope. And I know that's, like, the song that got you, like, your first play internationally and all that.
I love that being the first song that you heard from me and the first way you were introduced to me, because I think the message of that song combined with like the positive energy and just basically the song is a statement of affirmation, you know what I'm saying? And the way I wrote it was speaking that to myself, you know what I mean? To give you what you need, make you love it because you're so amazing. I was telling the mirror that. And to be able to put that energy into the world and for it to be received and appreciated is dope. Video was a lot of fun. You know, I was just like, that was the first apartment when I had moved out of my parents' house. And one of my guys who I was living with, he left town and he left like an ounce of weed. And you know, when we were smoking out of the bong with the orange soda in it, he was smoking his weed. So, so his weed was no longer in existence when he came back into town. And there were like orange jumpsuits all over the house and like orange inflatable furniture, just like it was a real mess because I left town the next day and didn't clean it. So he was bugged out when he got back. He's like, where's my weed and what the fuck is all this orange stuff doing in this house? Yeah, it was a fun time.
No, it looked like it was fun. If you go back to listen to like that project, you could tell like there's so much joy and fun and freedom in making like that project. And just like reading about like what your new album is, it feels like you're trying to like get back to that, but like in a more like modern sense of who you are. Like when it comes to like the themes of like innocence and being honest about what's happening and putting positivity out there versus like everything you've been through in the past like 10 years.
I think honesty is always a pillar of my music and something that I view as being like my superpower is my ability to be vulnerable in my art. Those create the most impactful moments for me. And this album is very much so about that and addressing many things that have taken place, either publicly or privately or a mixture of both, and processing them in real time. That's the way I view music. It's like my therapist. That's how I process things oftentimes before I even speak to my therapist or know the words to say in conversation. I look for them in a song. And this album, Victor, is a very personal album. That's why I named it after myself.
You're going through this experience of self-discovery. You're talking about the law of karma and just like being in a completely different place than you were like 2 years ago. I feel like that's what this album is about. So can you like speak on like being able to like share that story and be that vulnerable with people? Because like not everyone can do that. Like it's easy to be vulnerable, but it's hard to cut that deep and be like, here guys, I also want to share this with you guys.
I think first of all, you got to be real with yourself, you know, if you want to grow. And this album is all about growth. That's really where I'm at in life. And so the music represents that in many ways. Being grateful that I've been able to experience things and have the opportunity to grow from them, because a lot of young people don't. A lot of young rappers don't get the opportunity to mess up and, you know, like go down the wrong path and live to tell the tale, you know what I mean? So the Law of Karma song that you referenced is like a centerpiece of the album to me in many ways, because it finds me reflecting on a lot of controversies and just things that have happened in my life in the public eye, and making analogies that at the time didn't line up to me, you know? So I say like, look at me on stage at the March for Our Lives with multiple gun charges involved in homicides. Look at me crusading for violence against women, lying and cheating in every relationship I've been in. Look at me speaking down on a dead man's image when that's the same reason I was beefing with academics. No matter what we got, karma comes back to get us. And so when I think about those moments, I didn't have that perspective, you know? I was embroiled in the midst of whatever I was doing, you know? But with the blessing of being able to like live through and grow from things, I'm able to look back and be like, okay, you can't have it both ways. You know what I'm saying? If you want to be a voice for what's right and for the truth, then you can't act a different way in your personal life, you know? If you want to criticize people for a certain way that you think they're interacting with the world or speaking about your people, well, then you can't do that about other people, you know what I mean? And yeah, the album is just full of that. It's full of me reflecting and sharing the things that I've learned in musical form. That's the basis of it.
And I know like you've been doing like a lot of meditation, right? Recently?
I meditated today, I had a good one.
Ooh. So like what are like some key things? Because like I find it hard to meditate. So like what are some key things for meditation?
I think if you find it hard to meditate, then that's a sign that you really should meditate. I would say the key thing is repetition. As with anything, if you want to build a skill, it's just repetition. So I tell people, try starting with 1 minute a day. Move that into 5 minutes a day. Move that into 10 minutes, 20 minutes. And that's a good place to be. Like 20 minutes might turn into 30 minutes. Who knows, might turn into 45. But there are apps you can go through, like the Calm app. I use an app called Insight Timer. I'm promoting them now, they need to pay me. But these are the things I use. And the basis of meditation is training your mind to focus, and many times it's to focus on being at peace. So while you're meditating, people often think they're doing it wrong or that they have trouble meditating because they're like, I can't stop thinking. That's why you're meditating. So if you're trying to focus on your breathing or trying to focus on a mantra that you're repeating, and then you have a thought about, oh, I need to be at work in, an hour. Should I check the train? It's just training yourself to go back to what you're focusing on. And I think it's very valuable for all of us in our day-to-day lives, because there are so many things that'll take you off your pivot. You know what I mean? If it's something on Instagram, a text message you get, a phone call, there's so many distractions in our world. Meditation is the art of allowing them to be and still being centered in yourself.
I actually read in like a past interview, you said when you went to Ghana, like around the 6th grade, like it was like a life-changing experience for you, because like for the first time you felt like you were in a place where you fit in. And I know you took a group of Chicago students there.
Yeah.
What was that experience like for them? Like, did you see
Mm.
them experience that same thing for you?
For me, being in Ghana the first time, it gave me perspective on who I am. And so it did give me confidence and context. I don't know if I felt as much that I fit in because I didn't, you know? I mean, they consider me to be white in Ghana, so they call me something called Obroni. And so that used to piss me off. But it also gave me just confidence because I was meeting my entire family that I'd never met before, learning about where I'm from and the significance of my culture. So that gave me a lot of power that I don't think I had before that. When I took these kids in 2022 for the first time, and then we took another group earlier this year in 2023, I saw their lives change in a lot of ways. Many of them were headed off to college. A few of them changed their major on the spot, you know what I mean, just through the connections that they were making and the things they were learning about themselves and about the world. I think that we as Black people all need to experience being in Africa because that's our origin. And a lot of the divisions that exist between us, misunderstandings, judgments on both sides, it's all by design, it's manufactured to keep us separate. Same way that there are so many things designed to keep us as Black people in America from uniting and collectivizing power. Those structures are in place to keep us as Black people on the globe from linking up and looking around to see, man, who is responsible for us being fucked up out here? You know, same people.
I know like you're really into like prison reform, so I kind of want you to share the stories of Moosa and Julius Jones, because I know a lot of people don't know their stories.
Shout out to my brother Julius Jones, man. We're still working on his campaign for freedom now. Julius Jones was wrongfully incarcerated, put on death row in Oklahoma. This is something that takes up space in my album for sure. And I got in touch with Julius Jones in a beautiful way. I was writing a song about Moosa, actually, who is a friend of mine that was incarcerated when he was 14 years old and sentenced to 25 years, which is just an aberration of justice, just a travesty. And by the grace of God, in 2020, I was able to help him get his clemency across the line, and he came home 12 years early. So my whole life was changed by that. And I was writing a song about it, and I got a message from a woman who is close with Julius Jones, and he's on death row in Oklahoma. And she was like, you know, Julius, he wrote me a letter, and at the top of the letter, it said, theme music, We Could Be Free by Vic Mensa. And it was so dope to me, because I was in the studio writing about helping my other guy come home. And that was just one of those moments when I realized that the music I've made is serving its purpose in the world, you know, in a major way. That I wrote a song about freedom, and it's helping somebody on death row to strive for freedom. And I knew that was a God moment, because ain't no way I'm in the studio writing another one and you reach out to me now. So I start building with him, and his execution date was approaching. You know, I had a lot of faith though. I had a lot of faith because I had just experienced that Moosa situation, and seeing him come home when he wasn't supposed to, from a logical perspective, inspired me in a major way. And so with Julius Jones, I think we just kind of snapped into action. I did a song about him in a way, dedicated to him. It's called Shelter, with Chance and Wyclef. And as his execution date approached, I was able to help get Sean King on board, man. Sean King, I think he really helped move the needle with that one, because he brought in his organization and, you know, his massive following. Julius Jones already had 7 million signatures on a petition for his freedom, and Viola Davis did a docuseries, but the governor was still gonna execute him. And when Sean King got involved, I think things started to move forward, but the governor was still gonna execute him. The date's coming closer and closer. You know, people start bugging out. Family and things are kind of preparing for, you know, what's gonna happen. But I had this really ironclad faith. I just felt like this was gonna work out. The day of his scheduled execution, the governor made a ruling to take him off death row. And so that day I was in the studio and I wrote another song about it that's on this album. We're still striving for Julius Jones's freedom, but that was powerful. It was dope. Just like, obviously not to see him and his family get strung along like that. I thought that was super inhumane, but
For him to still be here.
for him to still be alive, like, it's just so dope.
So being in this space, what would you have told yourself 6 years ago? Because I know, like, when you're going through it and you're struggling mentally, like, sometimes you don't always see the light that it'll get better, but you know, like, it's there, but sometimes people don't always see it. So, like, knowing that you got to that point, what would you have told yourself 6 years ago if you were ever at a point where you're like, I don't know if this is going to be like how my life is always going to be?
I think what I would share with myself would be the value of mastering your self-talk and really focusing on the things you say to yourself. I didn't used to feel like I had any input in the thoughts that ran through my mind until I learned that I can direct the flow of traffic. I can't control it, but I can definitely direct the flow of traffic and make a decision thousands of times a day to think thoughts of power, faith, abundance, growth, joy, as opposed to letting those other things run wild.
And also, going back to your 93 Boyz cannabis company, I already know as a black person that's trying to, like, get into that industry, it's hard. It's hard as hell. So, like, how did you navigate being able to, like, secure your opportunity to be able to, like, start your company, and, like, what was, like, some of the challenges, and what are the challenges that minorities face trying to enter into this industry that we've been incarcerated for all these years?
Yeah, the cannabis industry is severely lacking in equity. And in Chicago, for example, when it was illegal, 91.6% of the people that were pulled over and charged with simple possession were black. Now that it's legal, 1% black majority ownership. So obviously it's difficult. And the licensing process is super difficult. It's pretty rife with corruption. It's still Chicago, and but across the nation, but specifically in Chicago, I can speak to it being really rife with corruption. There are a lot of examples of large companies that are just propping up black faces and using them as some type of, like, social equity poster child, while pulling the rug out from under them systematically and legally with binding documents. Many black people that get licenses have no chance of actually standing up to business because the capital required is massive. So there are just, like, a lot of challenges, It's for sure rigged, you know what I mean? I feel like 45 kind of co-opted that word, but this one is actually rigged. And with that said, though, there's a lot of good people that are hustling to make it be as equitable as it can be, And it's like, this is still America. They will not give it to us. We have to demand it. So there's a lot of good people doing that in New York, a lot of good people doing that in Chicago and California and Maryland and Missouri. As all these states become legal, I think it's just important that the people that have their foot in the door stay collectively minded and, like, bring their power together.
Still feel Chicago is an honest reflection of what America actually is.
Chicago, hell yeah.
Can you explain that?
Chicago is the truth about America. In many ways, that's why my father said he wanted me to be raised there, because he didn't want me to have any qualms about what America is really like.
Okay.
Chicago is rich with history and creative culture rivaling any, from the blues music to the jazz music, which they say are some of America's first true American art forms, to hip hop and house and the fine art, Gwendolyn Brooks, the poets and authors from Chicago. And at the same time, it's extremely segregated. It's full of violence. Sounds like America to me, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like America is this powder keg with the opportunity to explode in both ways. Positively, as an artist, you could probably go further. As an entrepreneur, you can probably go further in America than, say, my cousins in Ghana. But that possibility for explosion can also just kill everybody. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
we experience different things that just don't take place there. You don't watch your back in a grocery store. You don't be in church thinking, is it gonna get shut up? These are American phenomenon. And Chicago is definitely a representation of those.
When it comes to like artists traveling, they really go to Africa. And that has to also do with the infrastructure and that, like, I guess having the resources that is needed for that. So can you talk about the importance of like the Black Star Line Festival you guys had?
Yeah, no doubt. The idea from the Black Star Line Festival came when I was in South Africa. And I was just inspired. I was sitting down with some South African hip hop heads. They have a podcast called The Sobering. I was having a conversation. I'm having one with you now. And similarly, like, they're talking about orange soda. They're talking about music I made 10 years ago and how it impacted them when they learned about it. Reminded me about verses I don't even remember rapping, And I was just like, how is it that I'm from Africa and I've never performed here? Here are these people that know the music intimately well. My music, all my friends' music, all the contemporaries, and none of us have really performed. Rarely people do go to South Africa, but it's few and far between that they make it to West Africa. So I started to think about the possibility and the necessity to create some type of vessel by which Black artists were being brought to the continent to interface with the fans. The fans love the music, They just feel left out. They feel like you announce a world tour, but
Africa's
this
not
part of
in
the
it.
world is
Yeah.
never on the dates. And I knew in order to make it happen, it would have to be a labor of love and relationships, friends, favors, So the first person that came to mind really was Chance. And I don't know if I tapped in with him about it before he tapped into me and just told me he wanted to come because I was in Ghana at the time. And so I'm like, cool, like, get your visa set up and I could turn this around in 3 days. And, about 3 days later, he was there. And so I told him this idea, he loved it. And really it just happened quickly, A lot of people got on board and a lot of the Ghanaian artists and American artists from Erykah Badu to people in Ghana like Sarkodie and Stonebwoy and people back home like Dave Chappelle or people bridging that gap like Toby and Wigwe. And so January 6th of this year, we did the first Black Star Line Festival. That was 52,000 people, free festival for the people. Just like all love, all peaceful. And man, it went to like 6 a.m., 7 a.m. That was the latest concert I've ever been to because they don't operate on the same type of time schedule we operate on.
Oh my God, that sounds amazing.
It was tight though. The sun was rising. Like it was super dope. It came together.
And like, random question before we go: who makes the best jollof rice?
Who makes the best jollof rice? This is the debate. I mean, I'm not gonna cross the picket line. I'm staying with my side. We gotta say Ghanaian jollof is the best one.
Got it. So before we go, is there any last words you want to share?
No, just that I appreciate you, Unique. Thank you for speaking to me today.
Thank you for talking with me today, too.
No doubt.